So my son, our oldest child, has always helped me with when I got my first iPhone and with tech support. I used to, when I was out writing with my laptop, I would contact him when I had tech questions because one time he was with his girlfriend at the same coffee shop I was at and I didn't know it. And he showed up around the corner. And over the years, he's helped his grandmother a lot. Got her set up with an iPhone recently. And he told me, hey, mom, we got a special discount. We can get you set up with a new iPhone. So we went together to the Apple store or wherever we went. No, we went to the whatever store we had to go to get the phone. I think it was the AT&T store. So we drove together. You know, he's talking to the guy because our service goes through him. He's got a special service plan with work. So he had to be there for that part. So we're talking about things and getting things set up, and it takes a while. They've got to download your stuff and do all these connections. And he was going to go to the local Best Buy to get me a case because he can get it real discount. So as he goes to leave, he looks at the rep who's helping us and says, I'm going to run over to Best Buy and pick something up. I'll be right back if you need something. And I felt like, am I an old lady? Am I a little kid who needs watching? Like, we're good. You don't have to let the store manager know where you're going, leaving your little old mommy sitting there at the table. Um, it just made me laugh, being his mother and a parent, he's 27 and I'm only 55. So, just a funny moment where the children are parenting us.
Well, hello, this is Don.
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family.
And today is podcast number 177, and we're going to be talking about senior technology for seniors,
Yes.
some different things to possibly help seniors as they go along in their life here. Yeah,
And middle-aged people too. We all didn't grow
that's,
up with the
that's ones that
technology.
that are still children in our
Even in your
child's.
40s, can be challenged. And definitely if you're over 50, we didn't grow up with a lot of these things, and it's constantly changing to keep up with it.
Well, I know my older siblings always treat me like I'm a kid. I didn't know my kids treat me like kids either, but
Yeah, remember, it switches around.
yeah, it
I was
does.
talking to my brother about something as my mother, and he said, well, you're the parent now. Isn't that how it works? Um,
We talk about that a lot, though, as far as seniors and how it all switches. So, um, a couple of tips for you to start out with today. This is coming from the Council on Aging. It's 13 different tips that you want to take when it comes to technology.
so before we do that, don't we do a joke?
You can.
So I was looking up jokes. So this is a picture cartoon, but it's just one woman talking to another about her husband. She says, Leroy's not that tech savvy. He just dropped off his cell phone at the drugstore to get the photos developed. So you got to be of a certain age to get that
Yeah,
joke.
yeah. Oh my, yes.
Um,
Yeah, we used to drop film off all the time to the drugstore and
to
have
get
it
it
come back as
developed.
pictures. So yeah, I think you can still do that now. I don't know. I think it's different places you have to go because some films are coming back for people that like I know. I think
Well,
well,
you can have digital things printed too.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, you can have digital things. It's just
But
different than the
I don't
rolls.
think every drugstore has a capability for
I
doing
used to make
anymore.
I had the little cartridge camera from when I was little, and I'd mail in the cartridges. There were little envelopes online, little envelopes because you got a
Online.
discount, and you'd put them in there and you'd mail it in because it wasn't that long ago. It was before we moved. I found a roll of film. So it wasn't the cartridge, but I had graduated to an actual camera with a roll of film, and I found an undeveloped roll of film. And I'm trying to think. I think I went and got it developed. I hope I did. Or I still have that somewhere. Got lost in the move.
Mm,
So stories about getting photos developed. Yeah, we always did the thing in the mail because you could get two for one. And but back then you didn't, you developed everything on the film. So if you had a bad picture, and you had two of them,
yeah, yeah.
copious amounts of printed pictures, and then what do you do with all those things?
Well, and I don't know if I've ever told online, but I bought this camera from my friend when I was living in Mississippi, and he, at some years before that, had worked for Canon, the actual manufacturer in Japan, and he had this camera that he wanted to get rid of, and I was just kind of getting into kind of playing around with photography and all. So I bought the camera from him, and he said, "Well, it's got a roll of film in there." And he said, "I don't know what size it was." So I took the camera, and I mean, I took pictures of everything. My mother came in town. I took pictures with her, and we went down to Louisiana from Mississippi, and I kept going with it and going, wow, it went past the 12, it went past the 24, and then it started going past the 36. I said, hmm, I bet you. Well, what went through my mind was I hit it too hard and it busted the roll. So I took it into the drugstore and dropped it off. And he said, well, I have to take a look at it. I'll let you know. And came back and there was no film in the camera.
So you dropped the whole camera off at the drugstore?
Well, because I didn't want to open it in case I broke it. I didn't want to open it up.
You need to
So
open it in
he
a
took it.
dark room.
Well, that's exactly what they
For
did.
the
They
under
have a
30
little
crowd, you can look that up.
do what? What are you commenting in the behind my back?
No, I said for the under 30 crowd, you can look up what a dark room is.
Ah, so anyway. Well, anyway, I have um, some technology tips that you might want to keep in mind. And we can talk a little bit about this, but I'm going to kind of just go through them a little quickly. Um, and this comes from the Council of Aging. The first one is using strong passwords, and I think we're starting to get more and more involved with that, getting really good, intricate ones, not using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something like
Although
that.
I work with seniors and they still often use
Oh yeah,
a real
yeah,
simple password or their birth date. My mom used parents' anniversary, which happens to be numbers in a sequence. Um,
not a good idea.
so, yeah, but you want to have something memorable. Someone told me a trick. You take the name of your favorite movie and just use the first letters of it, or like a favorite saying or something. And so you use like the first letter of each word to keep it memorable, putting your capital in the middle somewhere. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and having a place to store it. But that's still an issue for people because,
Yeah, I store it off on an online private place for doing it. There's all kinds of your safe phone or your iPhone, I should say.
yeah, I like
Um,
Apple. In fact, my mom, um, she had a Surface laptop, and my brother got her set up with what's the company you used on? I think it was the same one to securely store passwords. And she hates the thing, and she can't remember the certain passwords, and it's complicated. And Apple's pretty secure. And it has its own way to store your passwords, and I love it because it saves it across the
yeah.
devices and different devices. And sometimes we need things simpler. We want them secure, but if what's the company you used on?
Well, it's Zoho.
Okay. So Don was in the hospital and he had a heart attack and then he had a stroke and lost some language ability. And we couldn't get into his computer to access information about his insurance. There was a bunch of things we couldn't access because he couldn't remember the password and didn't know where it was. So, like, make sure you have a loved one who knows
Yeah,
your
yeah,
passwords or how to get to where they are. Because, yeah, if something happens to you and you can't access that information,
yeah,
um, we spent a while trying to figure it out because I remember I told you sit down at your computer and maybe it'll come back to you. And you were on the phone, I think, waiting to talk to the company because it was so secure. You couldn't even just do a password reset.
Yeah. All right, well, number two is guard your personal information. So be leery of scams that are out there that
Oh,
that might take that information. You don't really want to put your social security and things like that out there for
and you
people
got to
to.
watch all these text messages that come across. I don't know if
Oh
that's
yeah.
another tip that's in there.
Well, yeah, it comes up ahead of time, but yeah, you got to watch out for that. So,
Because you'll get a
well,
text that'll say, "This is Amazon," and go to this link. And
that's the
most
next
of
one.
the
Be wary
time,
of unrealistic offers.
I'll forward it to my kids. This is a scam, right, kids?
Well,
And
and the other part is just, and this isn't the old-fashioned way in a way, but call the company. And I mean, Amazon's a tough one to get a hold of, but your insurance company, your
well, most likely they're not texting you either.
yeah, well,
And
that's
even even emails, phone calls, all
Social
these
Security,
all these things, yes, you got to be really careful of. And you need to help support your loved ones, your seniors, about this because um, they don't realize it and they're not used to all this. And oh, but this person contacted me and said this. It happened to you, Don. I
oh
think we've
yeah,
shared that story before. They
yeah,
phone company called and said they needed a special password, and
yeah.
it wasn't the phone company.
The next one is about installing reputable security systems like in your computer. One that I know of that's been around for ages is Norton, you know, but there's other ones out there, just making sure that whatever equipment you have, whether it's computer or any of it, iPhone's pretty secure,
Okay.
the
Little
Apple
plug
stuff.
for Apple.
What's that?
Apple's pretty secure. So if you don't have an Apple, you need to find
Yeah,
secure
but we still want to be
systems.
also cautious with anything. So, using privacy settings on social media, you know, that's what nowadays that's getting even worse with people scamming you on social media. So you've really got to be careful how you do things there. Um, don't post personal information on social media. Don't leave your. We're going on vacation next week and leaving the.
Yeah, and you can set things to friends only, private, or wait till you're home to post about your vacation, unless you're sharing it, privately with someone because, yeah, and these are things that we need to help our parents understand and to think about. Yes, go
The
on.
next one is now this one I've got to I should have read a little more into this because it's about avoid phishing scams. Are you familiar with what phishing means?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that before. Are you
You're gonna
trying
look
to
at,
are
you
you
know,
trying to throw a line out and catch a big one?
is that what it is? I don't really know because
Oh, you don't know?
it's not spelled with a like phishing like a
No, I know it's not. I didn't realize you hadn't heard of that before.
no.
Um, Spell it out, Don.
Well, let's see. Let's just look. One common tactic involves scammers sending emails meant to look like they are from a credible. This is what we kind of talked about. That's what AT&T, what happened with me,
Yeah.
to trick you into sending them personal information. So it's, I guess, putting a business name on something that really isn't that business. One of the things I always try to do when somebody even sends me something, first I'll look at the email just to even say if it comes from that site. Not that I would still follow it, but that can tell you something right there.
Well, yeah, looking at is it their actual .com? Is it their actual address?
Yeah,
You used to tell me this about mail, junk mail. If it's pre-sorted,
yeah,
things to know. It's really important. Must open this now, act now. But if you look at it and it's pre-sorted mail, then it's
yeah,
just a mass mailing. So we have to learn to do that with emails and text messages, like I was talking about. Yeah, the Amazon. And the problem is, your Amazon order, is being refunded, click on this link. And I almost did one recently, but sometimes you click on those links, you answer a question, and now all of a sudden, um, yeah, they've got your information. I was telling my mom, you get these phone calls, just saying the words yes
yeah. You
in
got
your
to watch it.
voice, they can record it because she wasn't aware of that. And had a patient who doesn't answer the phone unless she knows who it is, but she had a doctor calling her. And I was like, okay, we need to answer the phone because it could be the doctor calling. So she answers the phone and it was just a telemarketer of some sort. And, I would just hang up, but she's too polite. She's, in her 70s or 80s. She's of that generation. Well, thank you. No, thank you. I don't need that today. And letting them know it's okay to hang up because if they do, if it's the scam, getting your voice, saying something, they can record that and reuse that. I don't know if you told me that or our son told us that, but
Well, yeah, one of us did. Yeah, but
um,
that's very true.
so
Well,
those are the kind
it
of,
comes from that movie we watched. Remember, I was it called Eileen, or remember the lady that got scammed? That
yeah.
and um, because she thought it was her daughter, and it really
Well,
wasn't.
yeah, I mean
You know,
that was a common one. Send gift cards. Somebody's in jail, and you've got to do this to get them out. And
then gift cards. That's this by itself sounds weird, but no, it's scaled.
but
So.
when you don't grow up with that kind of thing going on, you don't. Some some people are trusting in nature, and maybe it's the first time they get one of those, excuse me, weird calls, and you can get caught off guard.
All right, the next one is report cyber abuse. So if you have been scammed or if you've gotten different uh, people often associate the idea of cyber abuse with young children being bullied online, but it also happens to older adults. Do not tolerate anyone sending you mean, threatening, accusatory, or excessively angry messages online. That's a crime. Um, Number nine, uh, think before opening attachments. Yeah, I very, very rarely will open any kind of
Yeah,
attachment unless
attachments
I
are
know it comes from a certain person that has told me they're going to send me stuff. I don't even send it from friends because if it's a friend and they haven't told me they were sending it to me, I'm
because
not going to
people
open it.
can bounce things off of other people's
Yeah,
email. That's what happens on Facebook a lot. Someone creates a fake account using your friend's picture and sends you information, and you think it's coming from them, but it's not. So if you get a new friend request from a friend that you're like, I'm already friends with them, that's a red flag there.
yeah,
And because it can look, you think it's your friend, it's the same picture as their account. So there's just so many different ways that and they really do target seniors. I mean, they know they're more
yeah. They know they're
gullible to
vulnerable.
these things, and
Especially if you get somebody that's still living with the dementia and don't have anybody caring for them at the moment, they become very vulnerable to that. So,
but
and the,
even without dementia.
and I think I said 13, but it's only 10. So the last one is set up a two-step authentication. And I think most companies are now coming to this where,
And it can be so annoying.
yeah, it is. But it does for certain things. Some of the stuff that we put out there for kind of bugs me a little bit. But when it comes to things like banks or things like that, it's helpful to have that as an addition. So anyway, those were 10 little tips, and we can always go more over those later on. But for now, we're going to talk a little bit about technology for
Oh,
seniors.
I thought we were talking about
Well, we
technology.
were with that. That was a tip for it, but
Okay. You have even more information.
well, I had looked up before, and when we talked before about doing more. I read it in AARP, but I did some more
Did you
research
sign
on
us
it.
up for more mulch?
But I'm working on that. I'm probably going to since we have room over here on the side of the house, I'll have them dump it over here this time so we don't block the driveway. No. Um, anyway, uh, so the first thing they talk about is personal alarms, and there's a couple different ways. They talk about the type we've all, I think, been set with the things like the Fitbits and things like that. You put
Personal alarms. So you're talking about,
what's that?
why are you looking that way? Um,
Oh, now I'm looking
I
the
don't
wrong
know
way.
what you mean by a personal alarm.
Well, they were talking about alarms that you would wear on your wrist, like
Alerts kind of
Yeah,
thing.
there's ones that, I mean, now they do so much that they'll check your heart rate, they'll check
So
blood
you're talking about like
pressure.
a watch or a Fitbit. I just you say
Here, you do
no, but you say
it.
wear a personal alarm. I'm like I'm going to attach an alarm to my arm.
Well, I mean, it is an alarm because it it sends out signals to you, it sends out signals to outside yourself, to professionals or whatever outside of it. So yes, it is a personal alarm.
I'm just trying to clarify what it is.
And it's like, it's funny because I was reading one of them is that you you can actually talk through the your little watch, and it takes me back to the days of Dick Tracy, and we thought that was so cool that they could talk to their watch, and
Having a smartwatch,
yes.
yes, that operates like a cell phone and does all those features.
Well, now that they've gotten to a place where they automatically detect if something's wrong, like if you fall, if you different things that might happen
Yeah,
to
my
you.
mom says it checks her breathing at night, and if it detects irregular breathing, if it falls, it automatically calls 911.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a whole because there's also there's kind of they kind of divide it into two, there's personal ones that you can put in for like checking your heartbeat and things like that. Then you go into more like telecare systems, which not only, do that kind of thing, but they also can then contact a doctor, contact the emergency room. They go directly over to those places to, like you just talked about, if your blood pressure drops or you fall or any of that, it'll actually get a hold of a doctor or something like that to get you in a better place.
yeah, the fall detection thing is so important, and I've worked at different facilities where they have a pendant that they wear, and the old kind, you press the button and you call for assistance.
Hmm.
But I work at an independent living facility, and the pendants that they provide to the residents, if you fall and that pendant hits the floor, it automatically dials 911.
Yeah.
So people are often like my mom has a pendant where she lives, but she doesn't typically wear it. And I was like, well, what about when you're in the shower? Because she's like, I keep it by my bedside table. And I've seen this happen to people all the time. If you're in the shower and you fall, put it somewhere where you could reach it from the ground. Don't hang it up high think about that if you something happens, you fall, you're likely going to be on the ground. So having it with you, if you don't carry a personal cell phone around, if you have your loved one has one of those pendants, they think, oh, I don't need it. I'm fine right now. But too often, I hear stories, they didn't have it on when it happened. They were outside and they fell down in the grass and they were there for a day and a half. Or I hear all these horror stories all the time. So finding a way. They make ones that go around the wrist if someone doesn't like it around their neck. If they use a walker, having a basket on it to hold it in, some way that
I've
it
got it.
stays with them.
One to top that. They now have GPS smart soles that literally fall into the shoe of
Oh,
the
I'm like
person.
smart soul.
No, not that kind of sole, but yes. Well, that's a different smart
Oh, so
sole. That's
smart soles. So you put them in your shoe
you put them in the shoe
like
and
an
it
insert.
indicates, I mean, from what I was reading, it looks like it indicates any kind of thing that goes on, blood pressure, also if you fall, things like that. So
That's
makes
a
it
great
even,
thing for people, who don't wear a watch or don't want to carry a pendant or know how to use a cell phone. You just stick it in, as long as they put their shoes on.
yeah, and they don't even have to know that it's necessarily in there, but
But if they get up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom and fall, they're not going to have their shoes on.
unless they fall on the shoe, set it right
So
outside the
thinking
bed.
about those things, that my first thought was, oh, that's wonderful. But then I'm like, wait a minute. A lot of times people fall and they don't have their shoes on.
Yeah.
So just thinking about those kinds of
Well, I mean,
things.
I think it's a combination. I think you would have that plus, you know, I don't know. Well, then it goes into you have bed sensors, chair sensors, you know, that's one they talk about different parts. They talk about what going into the home. You have door sensors, um, where if the door opens, door is left open. that kind of thing happens. You have bed sensors. If they get up out of bed, it'll
So if
um,
you're caring for a loved one in the home, my mom, so first my brother or somebody got her set up with an alarm on the door that went to her phone and it was an app. Well, she didn't always have her phone on her. So then she set one up that just it would sound an alarm when the door opened because my dad was an escape artist. So yeah, having something that's going to work for the person because you can put something that's too high tech and it's got to be user friendly to the person who's using it and what's going to work for them. So that's something to think about. You know, don't go in there and say, "Oh, mom, I got this great thing, this great device, and we're going to set this up," and then they don't
well,
know how to
and
follow it or they don't hear well and they, you know, if they don't.
or they well, and plus some of that, like your dad moved pretty quickly when he got out the door. By the time they actually hear the sound or start moving towards it,
To get
they're
the
already out the
notice,
door
yeah.
down the street already too
So
far,
it really
so
needed an alarm that just went off when the door opened.
yeah.
I mean, yeah,
But
the
they
tracking things are great. I know we had someone whose family member had a tracking device in the car. I'm not sure how she did that, but he had dementia and she moved him to a brand new state, a new city, and he took off in his car and got lost, but she was able to track where he was at.
yeah.
So, because sometimes they don't have their cell phone, he'd lost his cell phone. Um,
Well, they talk about you have things like kettle sensors and fridge sensors that, if the kettle isn't turned off after making tea, then it'll go
is there
off.
an oven sensor?
They have one that's a fridge sensor,
Do they
you
have an
know.
oven sensor? That's
I didn't open the list. There was a whole list of different
oh,
appliance centers.
gonna look for
Um,
that.
look for what? For me?
The next
Um,
thing on the list.
well, then of course the smoke alarms, and that I think is something everybody kind of handles in their um,
And won't the fire department come and change your,
yes,
they will come and change your batteries. And they say it's good to change the batteries even if they don't need them. Didn't they used to
once
say
a year.
once or twice a year? Is it once a year?
I think it's just once, but
Okay. Yeah, to just have a date where you change them. But yeah, if you live alone, your loved one lives alone, they can't do it themselves. See if the local fire department, will come out to do that because it's often in a location that's hard to get to and hard to reach to change it. Just like ours, that's at the top of our flight of 15 or 16 steps. And it started beeping in the wee
yeah,
morning hours.
and I have to get a ladder with somebody stepping on the end of it and that fun stuff. But
And we took the battery out and it was still beeping.
well, then these I didn't go into much, but like carbon monoxide detectors,
Detectors.
and they talk about each of these can be customized too, like smoke alarms that will also call the police, but also call a relative. Same thing with all these different ones can be modified to be able to call someone outside of just the fire department or the police department. They also call a relative. Even temperature sensors, whether now I don't think that would be alarm, but if somebody had their temperature set too high or too low,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't hurt for you to notify that what's going on, because it could be something in their bodily that they're feeling very cold, so they turn it up. Might be a reason for that. I don't know if that.
Yeah, they're running a fever or someone who's just confused and puts the temperature way too hot or way too cold. And, if it's really hot temperatures like we're having in North Carolina and much of the country, I think, right now, or if it's really cold, yeah. Um, if you want to maintain someone at home, but they have limitations with their cognition, yeah, see what things are available, especially for families who are living far away from a loved one and they're trying to support them the best they can from a distance. Yeah, you can get some of these different services put in that you can monitor it wherever you're located.
Well, then they talk about a flood detector,
Hmm.
and so I hadn't thought about that, that water main breaks or the hose to the washer breaks and your house floods. it doesn't hurt to have even something like that. I think it's more than just when the river overfloods. It
Yeah, we
also
needed that
talks.
when we moved in because the overflow tank on our hot water heater broke, and it's in our garage, and we went out there for some reason, and there's water spraying everywhere.
Yeah, that could have been a
Could have
lot
done a
worse
lot
if
more
you.
damage. So
Yeah.
yeah,
They talk about, of course, these are smart doorbells.
smart doorbells.
What did I say?
I'm not sure.
Smart door, smart doorbells. Yes, that which allow not only yourself to see, but you can a relative, a friend, or whatever can also see somebody's at the door.
And you
Uh,
can talk to the person, which is so great. We have a ring. I know there's other companies to do this, but our son hooked it up for us. And you don't even have to be home. Someone's at your door, they ring the bell. It can alert you, and you can be like, how can I help you? And you could talk to them. So if it's someone that's not valid and you start talking, it's hopefully going to scare off someone who is not there for good intentions. But you can avoid opening the door and going out there because, yeah,
Now, if they could only trigger it to make the sound of a dog barking in the background, that could be an added feature. So you talk to the person and say, you can come in, but there's a dog in
no,
there.
don't invite people in. That's bad advice. Bad advice. Don't invite strangers into your home. Talk to them through your ring.
And then they talk about a key safe that you can have outside that's censored by a code.
Yeah, don't put your key under the doormat. I mean, so many
No.
people keep a spare key in a hidden spot.
Uh,
Um, you could always get a lockbox. Our son's got a smart um, door lock, so you can put a code in rather than having to have the key to open it. But people probably really need to think that idea of the hidden key because, um,
well, they talk about this is a safe that can only be opened with a code to get into it. Um, it what I see as the problem is when you have a senior at home that falls and can't get to the door,
mm,
finding some way to be able to get, 'cause
well,
I,
having a very trusted neighbor or a family member, giving them a spare key. Um,
well, I
it's
just remember our our old neighbor
mm,
used to lock the screen door as well as and there was
oh,
no key for the screen door.
okay. Mm.
Now, key safe wouldn't help that, but that I've always had to tell her, please stop locking that. You call me in here, at midnight and you want me to come over. I can't get in here if you lock this anyway.
The screen door. Yeah, and these are things to think about because if it is an emergency, the emergency services will find a way to get in,
Oh
but you
yeah, they
obviously
will.
don't want them busting, especially a screen door. Um,
Yeah, they will.
yeah, so if your main door is locked, you don't need to also lock the screen because that's much easier to probably break through anyhow. Um, y-
So, and then the other thing that I found a couple other smart ideas, I guess, if that's what you want to call them. Of course, is a smartphone, getting a one that's got large enough numbers. An idea with a smartphone is to put kids' name into it, emergency contacts, ways for people to find out who they need to contact or how to get a hold of somebody. Um, I don't know if you got any other ideas for smartphones.
well, I work with a lot of seniors who don't realize that they can program their phone to go, call my mom or call my daughter. I have
For
call my,
for like an emergency you talking about or
just to make a phone call rather than having to search. Maybe someone's got poor vision.
oh
Rather than having to search around, how do I do this? You can just, hey Siri, or the name of your device, or if you have a smart home system. I've just set off my hey Siri, stop Siri. Um, you have a smart home device, an Alexa, a Google, that you can have it make phone calls for you. I work with a lot of people with visual issues, but also just the dementia, not knowing how to operate this device. that, and like you, I have a Donna in my phone and a Don. So I programmed it for your phone number to say, call my husband. And, you can do this more
Yeah.
safely. You can, while driving, it's much safer to use the voice activation if you need to make a phone call. But it can be really helpful to seniors and helping them set that up to get the names in there. And, maybe they struggle to remember the name of someone. So you can put, call my caregiver, call my daughter, call my son. I don't know if you can do like son number one, son number
I
two.
don't, I never thought about
There
that. Yeah.
might be ways to do that, but support your loved ones or find a grandchild. Find someone to help you. My parents lived in a 55 plus community and they used to have Apple classes and tech classes and supports. Check out the senior centers and other free services that might be available to help them learn the equipment because it is complicated and unfortunately it's ever changing as well. So to be able to understand it and follow this information, there are devices and things that can support people that are simpler. I'm still working on the phones being simpler. Um, the Jitterbug was the simplest format of a phone for seniors, yet you keep looking at me, Don. Um, talk to our audience. Um, but they changed the setup of it, right? It needs large high contrast buttons that can be easily seen, that are easy for hands that are arthritic or have tremors or poor coordination and things, that these things can make it really challenging for someone to use. Sometimes I tell loved ones if there's a landline access, sometimes that's easier for
Yeah.
them to have to use because it can be really complicated trying to navigate regular smartphones. So I'm always on the lookout for something more friendly. There's one for low vision that I just recently learned about, but it takes some learning how to use it. It's all voice activated, but you have to have someone help you set it up, and it wasn't intuitive. Someone came to me. I was working at my weekend job, and he's like, I need help with my phone. And they were doing it as part of his occupational therapy. Yet, looking at the phone, like without the instructions, I couldn't figure it out. We helped him call his wife on the landline. But so looking at these things and realizing it's not just that simple, and you can't just tell someone it's just this easy, and you show them once and think they're going to follow it and understand it because it is complex. Even at 55 with apparently no cognitive impairment, but that could be argued. Who knows? I get challenged by these things. And, I have technology at work I've got to utilize and computers and things are changing and it's frustrating. And so, supporting someone who's even older, and if there's any amount of slight cognitive impairment going on, often undiagnosed, if they're getting frustrated with it and saying they don't want to be bothered, that's a sign that people might not want to admit that they don't know how or they can't
Um,
remember. They can't, this is a really intelligent person who was an engineer and has their master's or their PhD in science or something, and they're not going to want to say I don't understand this. We've got to realize.
well, and I mean, if you think about it too, like I say, it changes almost by the minute, it feels like. And to think anybody could keep up with that constant changes, that's where you have to be more humble and be able to say, it's a lot. And
And people can be rude about things. I've seen
yeah,
this more and more with families. And if you're dealing with your senior and as it is, maybe they're not driving anymore or they had to move out of their home. There's already so many things that independence has been taken away from them that you don't want to keep throwing things at them that they can't do. It's just a matter of empathy. I talk to people and say, I struggle to figure out my phone. Yeah, I talk to my teenage, my 20-year-old kids to help me figure this out. Just that empathy and realizing if they're aggravated, if they're just refusing, there's probably more to it than that. Get
yeah.
some support. Find an occupational therapist. That is something I do as part of my practice is setting a goal of someone being able to utilize a phone or figuring out the best option for them, whether it's visual, written reminders or things that need to happen, or just the familiarity of doing it repetitively, right? We set someone up who's really poor hearing with they make something that amplifies the phone but also sends a flashing light, so the family set it up for her and we called her to see if it worked. That the challenge with that is she has to be in the same room to see the flashing light um, for it to work. But, the repetition, don't just think because you set it up and showed them once, they're going to remember. And if it's frustrating you, who can help support you? Who has the patience? Can one of your children, their grandchildren, or someone else who has some time? Often, you could pay a 13-year-old, a little bit of money to help it out. They might be real appreciative of doing that, a little incentive, um, and getting someone who's maybe got more patience and more time on their hands to support them. And yeah, just thinking about the respect component is what I'm thinking about as I'm describing this when we're dealing with this. Not just you're old and you don't know how to do anything, and I'm always having to help you, and this is so annoying, and I've told you once, so I have to tell you again. We need to stop and think about the language we're using when we're helping an aging loved one, and just really stop and think about it. Do we sound like we're talking to a little kid? And they are a full-grown adult, even if they have dementia, and there still needs to be that level of respect. So think about that and the wonderful tips that we've shared with you today. And remember, if you're having trouble with navigating these things with caring for loved ones, juggling your own life, and maybe even raising children, reach out to Don and I and see how we can support you at focusedhealthyfamily.com. Were there any other pointers, Don, for today?
Um, well, there was a couple of questions I put on there about uh, things to consider with technology. Just there was like four
Mm-hmm.
different questions I put out, and there's probably more to it, but just, like which sensors to install and where to install them, is the idea. What is the considered abnormal behavior? I think that's kind of a light question for when you talk about like what's on email and what you're getting across there, what
Oh, not a person's behavior, but yeah, what's abnormal as far as a phone call or
or
something
somebody
that's
coming to the door, any of that kind of stuff.
how to spot those
Yeah,
things.
who the monitor call, let's see who the monitor calls in each incident. So I guess you can, when something you fall, where does it call? Does it call you? Does it call a relative? Who does it call? Besides, of course, the fire department or the police department or things like that. And the last one is whether you like passive telecare or you use a more triggered alarm approach. So in other words, passive meaning you're handling it all on yourself, you're doing it all yourself, or you have a more one that goes to a professional that takes takes that alarm a lot further along, something like that.
So we hope we've given you some things to think about, hopefully some helpful information and tips, and we'd love to hear from you. Please let Donna and I know what topics you found helpful. We take all forms of feedback and other topics that you'd like to hear, anyone you know that you could connect us with, or just, I really talked to this person. I want to hear more about this. We can reach out. We're always looking to set up more interviews with different people to discuss different things in more depth in their area of specialty. So please learn more about us at our website at focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can look and to see the consulting work that we do and Don's EFT tapping services. You can join him every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where he does a free online tapping. And you can learn more about that all at our website at focused with an ed healthyfamily.com. You can find us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family, Instagram Focused Healthy Family 1, and if you're listening to this, you can also see our podcasts at YouTube at Focused Healthy Family. And join us each Thursday. And please be sure to check back and you can do a search on our podcast page for prior episodes of things that we've discussed. We have been focusing on caring for aging loved ones, but in the context of caring for ourselves and possibly raising children as well. Our first year or more of podcasts really focused more on the family aspect of raising children, dealing with anxiety, self-care, and all those things. And we've just expanded to it to, caring for your aging loved one. And those of you who are like us in the sandwich generation, where we're caring for an aging loved one and still raising or supporting our kids in some way or form. So again, hope you've enjoyed that. Reach out to us, connect to us, and also remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.